Hello everyone, my name is Jordan Guillen and I'm the Fitness and Sports Coordinator out of London, Ontario, supporting Southwestern Ontario. Before we get started into today's strength endurance workout, let's take a moment and review the disclaimer for your safety. Now that we've reviewed the disclaimer, let's get into the specifics of today's workout. In today's workout, we're going to focus on a combination of movements that are going to include multi-joint movements, which are compound, and then single joint movements, which are isolation. We're going to focus on some pre-exhaustion and some post-exhaustion, but all of our movements today are going to be done in a superset type fashion. We're going to focus on approximately 20 seconds work of two movements back to back, followed by 20 seconds rest, and we're going to repeat this throughout today's session. So we're going to focus on a series of movements that will base on the anterior, the front of the body, followed by movements that will focus on the posterior, and then we're going to get into some movements that will target the shoulders specifically. Let's go through the exercises now that we're going to be focusing on today. For today's session, we really only need a band. We also need a location where we can anchor to. So today I've anchored a band into the tank that I have, but really you can use anything that you have around your household or available to you. And then I've anchored one of the bands to our chin-up bars. So it's not that you need two bands, you can move them throughout your session. It's just that the exercises that we perform, they can vary in intensity, which might mean that you want to use a different band for each of those. And I'll identify which band I'm going to use for which of my movements. So now let's get into the exercises that we're going to perform today. So for the first exercise, we're going to perform a fly. Now this will be a chest fly that will be performed from an upper position, and we're going to be moving down into a lower position. So I'm going to start off with my hands into the handles. I'm going to keep my head neutral, and from this position here, I have a little bit of tension pulling back, and staying upright, I'm going to bring the band down in front of my body, and I'm going to move through that movement nice and controlled. So I'm going to bend my elbows in the back position, and as I come forward, I'm going to squeeze my chest together, extending my arms into that low position. The next exercise that we're going to do is going to be a standard base push-up. So for this movement, we're going to come down to the floor. We're going to focus on retracting our back and pushing through. And you can do this from your feet, you can do this from your knees. The position that you start off in is going to be completely up to you. So we're going to come down in that low position, keeping a nice neutral spine, head is neutral, and we're going to move through that range of motion. Okay. Also can be performed, as I mentioned, from the knees. The next movement we're going to go into is going to be a negative push-up. And the negative push-up, we're going to take the same position, and the pivot points can be the same. But we're going to be focused here on lowering our body weight, and we're going to do this under control. So the negative will be into position. We're going to lower 2, 3, 4, help ourselves back up from the knees, and we're going to lower 2, 3, 4. Okay. The next exercise we're going to focus on is going to be a fly. But what we're going to do is we're going to change the angle. So I've mounted it down below. This would have been my heavier band. This is my lighter band. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off in that same position as I did previously. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move through from a slightly different angle. So instead of moving from the high position down, I'm moving from the low position up. But in terms of allowing my body to stretch out in that extended position and focusing on bringing my arms straighter together and squeezing my chest in that extended position, that's all the same. The next movement we're going to focus on here is going to be a press. And for the press, I'm just going to do this from the high position. And it's going to be similar, but what's going to change is going to be my hand position. So I'm anchoring in, I'm getting enough tension, and what I'm going to focus on doing is breathing in, bring my shoulder blades together, and then pressing out as I come in front of my body. Now, what we're going to do then is we're going to go into a movement specifically for the triceps, which is the back of the upper arm. And I'm just going to have to move these handles marginally. And what we're going to do here is we're going to keep our elbows locked into the side of the body, but we're going to focus on bringing the band or the handle of the band down into the side of the body. So I'm actually coming back behind, but I'm trying to, as much as possible, keeping my elbow back and not allowing it to move forward. So these are the movements that we're going to focus on for the anterior of the body. The only difference being is the tricep factored in, which is obviously posterior, and we're doing that opposite within back as well. So the first movement that we're going to focus on for back is going to be a pull down. And what we're going to do is we're going to grab our band that's anchored in that high position. We're going to step back, trying to keep a neutral spine. And from here, I'm bringing the elbows in towards the side of the body, and I'm keeping my head neutral as I bring it into this position. The next exercise we're going to do, or the next movement, is going to be a pull down. So what we're going to do is we're going to be in this extended position, and we want to keep our back neutral. And as I bring the resistance down in towards my body, I'm standing more up, and I'm really focusing on squeezing my lats, which is my outer back, okay? So those are the two movements there that we're going to focus on for back. We're actually going to do them in the reverse order, but you'll do that with me when we get into this session. We're then going to focus on a high row. With the high row, all that's going to change is our elbow or our arm position, and we're going to superset this in with a pull apart. So what we're going to be focusing on here is a movement that's going to target mainly the upper back. So we'll come into position here, making sure. So how we move away from the resistance is going to determine how difficult it is. So the further I step back, the more tension I'm going to have, the harder it is. So I can always start off further away and move in to make it easier if I do end up starting to fatigue. So we're into position here, neutral spine, and I'm going to focus on keeping my elbows in line with my shoulders, and I'm primarily trying to target the upper back through this movement. Now, if I was doing a lot of repetitions, or just with the amount of volume that we're doing, if I were to start to fatigue, I would just change the band. I would switch over to the red band, which for me is a little bit lighter. Going through into the next movement would be the pull apart, and I'll use this specific band to demonstrate. And what we're going to do is we're going to hold the resistance in front of the body, and we're just extending it out. So I'm staying neutral through my upper body, and the main focus here is going to be in through the upper back as well, and it's going to primarily target the rear delt. So the next set of movements that we're going to go through is going to be the row, and I could also do this from a standing position. I could do this from a low position, but the row, all I'm going to focus on doing is bringing the resistance down in towards the side of my body, and I'm going to bring my elbows together as if I'm trying to squeeze them in and behind myself. If I wanted to, I could also do this from a standing position. So we definitely do have some options, okay? And we can adjust as we need to and as we make our way through the session. With the bent over row, we can focus on a curl. And what we can do here is just stepping into the band and just focus on bringing the resistance up. Now, if you want to anchor it, you may be able to get a little bit more tension created. So this would be an example here. So now I have the resistance behind me, and I'm trying to keep my elbows in a aligned position with my body as well. And this is just going to allow me to create a little bit more tension. Now, alternately, if I'd like to, there's nothing wrong with changing this up to work different angles, but I could also focus on a high bicep. That one's a little bit more difficult with the tension that I have. And what I'll do is I'll stay consistent throughout, but I want to give you some options at home. So lastly, with the shoulders, I'm going to have to grab the lighter band. But what we're going to focus on here initially is going to be working the top range of the motion. And what we want to do with this movement, where a lot of people make a mistake, is we want to focus on maybe being slightly forward with our hands. We want to keep a little bit of a lower position with our hands relative to our shoulder. And this will allow us to target the area that we want, which is going to be the medial aspect. What we don't want to do, and I'm hesitant to even demonstrate this, but where a lot of people make the mistake, is they try to open up as we come back. And that's going to target a lot more of the anterior or the front delt. So let's just focus on the former, not the latter. So these are the movements that we're going to be focusing on today. What we're going to do now is we're just going to take a moment and loosen up the body, warm up slightly before we get started. So we're going to go ahead now, we're going to loosen up a little bit before we get started. But the resistance is relatively light, so I'm going to spend a lot of the time warming up in through just by doing the movement itself. So initially, let's just focus on doing some shoulder rolls in a forward direction. If you want to move around with your feet, that's fine. This session isn't going to be overly aerobic. We are going to do a lot of volume, and we are going to limit the rest. So in doing this, it is going to elevate the heart, but it's most likely not going to get into an aerobic zone. If you need to, you can modify by doing less sets, or you can focus on doing less reps within each of your movements. So I'm going to focus on doing anywhere from 8 to 12 per movement. And if I finish before, let's bring the arms in front of the body. If I finish before the 40 seconds, then I'll just have a little bit of additional rest. It'll most likely end up being the case that I'll end up doing more work through the second exercise than in through the first. So we're just doing this to get the blood flowing, just to loosen up. Let's bring the arms down from the side of the body. Let's bring them up overhead. So just that dynamic movement, swinging in through. Let's focus on pushing in and out. So as I mentioned before, trying to bring the elbows together and then pressing forward as we move in front of the body. We always want to be conscious of what we're doing. We want to focus on keeping tension, keeping resistance in through the muscle. Let's focus on doing some push-ups with body weight. So we'll come into position, and we'll just focus on 5 initially. So from here, let's focus on doing a few rows. So we'll just grab onto our resistance band, we'll step back, and we'll just focus on 5 here as well. So remember not to neglect the negative. So the negative is going to be the extended position in this specific exercise here. Let's focus on going through the shoulder press, which I'm now recognizing that I neglected to demonstrate. And let's repeat that cycle one last time before we actually get into this session. So back into the push-up position, and we focus on 5, 3, 4, and 5. Let's move into the row. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now let's go ahead and focus on that shoulder press one last time. 1, 2, 3, controlling that negative, 4, and 5. All right, so take a moment here, grab a drink if you need to. You're controlling your own music from home, so if you don't have anything going already, take the time now to go ahead and start it up. I am going to be running a timer. You're not going to see it, but you will hear it, and that's when we're going to know when to switch into the next exercise. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to get my smartwatch going, and this will be an opportunity for you to do the same. And I'm just going to call this a traditional strength workout, even though it is going to be a little bit more in terms of work, but it still is a form of traditional strength training. So I know I demonstrated it in the reverse, but what we're going to do is we're going to start with the pull down. So I'm focusing on 10 to start initially. So I'm focusing on extending. That's 2, 3, keeping everything controlled. 4, palms are facing down towards the ceiling. 5, 6, squeezing the lats as I come through. 7, that's 8, and that's taking me a good amount through my time. So let's come into this pull down position, so this lat pull down position. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I wanted to get 8 in. That just means I'm going to have a little bit less rest. So that's the first superset, and that's a pre-exhaustion. It's the isolation into the compound. And now we're going to go from the high row into the pull apart. So if you need more rest, take it, but I'm going to keep moving here. I'm not going to step back as far with this movement. This one's a little bit more difficult because it's utilizing some of the smaller muscle groups, being the rear delt. I'm going to get a couple more reps in, and then I'm going to switch to that movement. So now we're moving into the isolation movement, which is the pull apart, primarily focusing on the rear delt. So breathing in and out. And within this workout, there's a lot of volume. So you're certainly going to get the blood flowing. So the next exercises that we're going to be moving into is the row. And I'm just going to start off doing this from the high position, and then we'll move into the curl. So I'm just going to get this set up here, which would allow us to do the bicep curl. So stepping back, 2, 3, 4, 5, chest out, almost as if you're trying to bring your elbows together behind your back. All right, now we're switching into that bicep. Let's keep it up. All right, so now we're going to take some additional rest, and then we're going to move through that series again. So it's important that we rest in between. It's going to give us the ability to recover so that we can then go back and work once again at a greater capacity. If we didn't build in the rest and we kept moving through, what would end up happening would be that we just end up fatiguing, and it wouldn't it wouldn't put us in a position to be able to maintain that repeated contraction time and time again. So in allowing us to rest, it's going to allow us to continue through without fatiguing and do so even under a greater amount of stress and tension. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get ready. We're moving back into the first movement, which is going to be the pull down. So everything's nice and controlled. I'm coming upright into this position just to extend my range of motion. So I'm focusing on extending forward. And let's switch that movement now. So now we're going into the lat. Neutral spine, head neutral. All right, 20 seconds. So now we're going to be moving into that high row and we're going to get ready for that pull apart. So I'm going to move this out of the way just so that we can be ready for that next movement. And we're going high row. So elbows nice and high. Try to squeeze through your movement. Focus on maintaining tension. Controlling that negative, and then moving into that isolation now of the rear delt. If you do start to fatigue, just take a break. Through this movement here, I'm keeping my elbows high, but it's definitely fatiguing. Next movement is going to be the bent over row or the standing row. Pulling from a high to a more mid position, and then we're going to move into the curl. So for the curl, I think I'll do it from the upper position this time, just changing the angle. So extending, but I'm not allowing the resistance to pull me forward, and I'm really trying to squeeze through my back as I try to bring my elbows together through behind my body. Now into the bicep curl. Okay, so I'm going to focus on keeping my elbows high, and I'm going to bring the handles in between my ears while I keep my head in a neutral position. So what I was actually trying to do with that bicep curl is I'm actually trying to bring my pinky finger inward. So I'm twisting at the wrist, and what that's going to allow you to do is get a greater contraction in through your biceps. So think about that as you move through your movements, and this can be done with your regular curls or as I demonstrated before with the position where you're pulling the resistance from behind. So just remember that little movement of bringing the pinky in to try to enhance the overall contraction. So we're going to go through that series one more time, and then we're going to go through those exercises for the chest. So in terms of my heart rate, I'm not in an aerobic zone, but it is close. I'd be within 50 to 60%, well, within 50%, I'd say, of my overall heart rate max. So 60% is where we're really going to get the aerobic benefit. And as mentioned, I'm approximating that I'm in and around 50% just from my own knowledge. So let's step right back at that 20-second mark, which is now. And let's bring the elbows down in towards the side of the body, keeping the head neutral. And we're really trying to focus here on the lat, which is the outer part of the upper back. Okay. High row and then pull apart. So if you need to in between, grab a drink. If you need extra rest, feel free to take it. So now we're going to be focusing on that high row. Foot positioning is up to you, but really focus on keeping your elbows high, focus on that overall contraction. As I mentioned before, the resistance isn't overly heavy for me, but it's the volume, it's the work with the little amount of rest, which then makes it more difficult. So now we're into that pull apart. And I don't have as much time, but that's good because my rear delts are already starting to fatigue. So still getting in that 40 seconds work. So now we're going to move into that row. And I'll just switch it up for this one, and then we'll go into the bicep curl. So for the row, I'm going to have to get some extra tension. Neutral spine. Breathing in and out. And I'm trying to squeeze. So the resistance isn't all that much, but I can focus on the tension just by contracting the muscle. So from here, let's go into the bicep curl. And I'm going to step on it a little bit further to create more tension. I'm focusing on that same aspect of trying to bring the pinky inwards, extending down to the point where I lose tension. And let's focus on a breather. So those are the exercises that we're going to be focusing on today, which is emphasizing the back. But like I said, it also does hit the bicep. We only did the one isolation movement for the. We only did the one bicep isolation movement. But you have to remember, with all of these exercises that we're doing that are targeting into the back, we are still using the supporting muscles. So talked about that in the beginning, the bicep, the rear delt. These are some of the smaller muscles that are being used in these movements for the back. And then, we obviously have those larger muscles being, our lats, and then we're hitting the lower, the mid, and the upper back as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to move into the fly for this next exercise. And we're coming from the high position into the low. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move it into the push-up. And then we have the negative push-up and the fly from the low to the high position. And then we have the press. And then we're going to be focusing on the tricep press down. So into that push-up position. Trying to control your movements, head neutral. Good. So taking a quick breather here. As I mentioned in the beginning, we're trying to really target the chest. So retracting the back means that you're bringing your shoulder blades in together. And as we push forward, we're really trying to target the chest. Let's do the negative on a 4 count. So 2, 3, 4. Help yourself back up. 2, 3, 4. Help yourself back up. 2, 3, 4. Help yourself back up. And let's get ready and move into that fly. So we're starting off into that low position. And then coming up forward, bending the elbows in the back position. Extending the arms as we come forward. And let's take a breather. We're going to move into the press and then the tricep press down. So this series is going to be a little bit more exhausting just because it is some bigger, heavier compound movements. We're using more weight, which is body weight. And that's specifically with the push-ups. So breathing in, retract the back, and then press forward. How far forward I step is going to be what determines the overall amount of tension. But I'm not going to go too heavy because we're doing a lot of volume here. Remember to keep that back arch or neutral. Breathing in and out. All right, taking a little bit of a longer breather here. So I was explaining that these push-ups are obviously a higher intensity compound movement just because of the amount of resistance. And everything that we've done so far, it's with a lighter amount of resistance, which is why, once again, we can get away with doing so much volume, so much work to rest. Looking at my heart rate, I'm still within that 50% range. Now, if we were taking more rest overall throughout the workout, my heart rate would most likely be lower unless I was lifting more resistance. The other thing I want to discuss again is with the negative. So the negative, we're 40% stronger. So even after we've fatigued through the positive, we can focus on still doing some movements in through the negative. So let's get ready into that fly position. This is round 2. And down into that low position, breathing in and out. So elbows bent into that finished end position. Straight forward, focus on bringing out the chest as you extend in that forward direction. Let's get ready into the push-up. So let's get into position, controlled, full range of motion. And if you need to, just go down to the knees. The other thing I want to mention with the push-up is as you have your hands into position, push inwards. So don't move your hands, just push them in. It'll help contract the chest even further. Let's go into the negative. So lower, 2, 3, 4, help yourself back up. Lower, 2, 3, 4, help yourself up. Lower, 2, 3, 4, help yourself up, and let's transition into the fly. So into that kneeling position, hands back, come forward to create your tension, breathing in and out, pushing the chest forward as we come into this extended position, and let's take the rest. And we have the press. And then the tricep extension, or the tricep press down. So get the tension that you need. Stay upright, pressing forward, breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Focus on your tension. Make that connection with the mind and the muscle. Let's switch that movement. We're going to go into the tricep press down. So elbows are in towards the side of the body, maintaining that neutral position. Okay, we have one more set of the chest, and then we're going to move in to the shoulders. And there's only 2 exercises as we had gone through in the beginning with the shoulders, so it is going to go a little bit quicker through that last segment. Within the shoulders, we've already trained the front, the rear. We'll be doing a little bit more medial, and obviously, the press is going to hit multiple muscle groups. We're going to mainly isolate with the fly. So we've also hit the rear with the pull aparts, the pull downs from the top. Those are the 2 movements that emphasize Obviously not the only one. So let's get into position for the fly. So from that high position, bringing it down low in front of the body, trying to eliminate momentum. And remember, this is the last movements through for the chest. So we're more than halfway through the workout at this point. We're in that last portion of the session. So now we're into the push-up. And if you've started to fatigue, just drop down onto your knees. So keeping control all the way through. Try not to pause in the top position. Okay, taking a moment, moving into the negative. This will be the last time we do this movement, but it's probably going to be one of the most difficult movements now based on where we are within this session. So starting in the top position, we're going to lower, 2, 3, 4. Help yourself up. Lower. 2, 3, 4. Help yourself up. Lower. 2, 3, 4. Help yourself up. Last one. Lower. 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to transition into the fly. So we're going from that low position up. And I had done it from a kneeling position before, but I'm going to modify. Okay. We have the chest press and then the tricep press down. And that'll be it for the chest. We'll have a minute and then we're going to go into the shoulders. Breathing in and out. And let's switch that up into the tricep press down. Great work. A minute, and then we're going to switch it out. So heart rate's moved up just marginally. I'm probably in and around 55% now, just because of that continual work, that limited rest. So we're going to move into the shoulder press and then the side lateral. So I'm going to use this here for the press. So a little bit heavier resistance for the 20 seconds. And if I find that I'm fatiguing, I'll just switch resistance. So I'm going to step on it from the back foot. I find that this gives me a better position overall. I'll step back so I'm more in view. Arms are roughly at about a 90. And I'm pressing up, but I'm not coming completely above head because I don't want to transfer the resistance into the skeletal system. So last one here, and then let's move into the lateral. So I'm using a lighter resistance here because it would be too heavy otherwise. And right now I'm just going to work the top range of the motion. So you'll notice I'm not coming all the way down, but I'm also focusing on not leaning back. So trying to keep tension throughout the full range of motion. We're gonna do 2 more sets, and then we'll be wrapping it up. I actually think we're almost there now. Let's go back to the shoulder press. Controlling it down and then pressing up. Breathing in and out, And if you want, you can move one at a time as well. The other arm is obviously still under tension. Let's transition. This time, let's go through the full range of motion. So from that low position back up to the top. Taking a breather. We're doing great. We're almost there. I want to do one more shoulder press, one more with the side lateral. And then we're going to conclude the session. Almost there. Let's keep working. And let's get ready to switch. I'm going to change my angle slightly here so that you can see. And I'm just going to focus on the upper range. And I'm definitely fatiguing, so I'm going to take a little bit of a break. We're almost there. Okay, awesome work, guys. We're going to call it there. So overall, we ended up training for over 25 minutes. At this point, actually, we just hit 25. And in terms of the overall amount of sets that we did a lot of volume. So our overall work to rest was 40 by 20. And then we went through the superset 3 times of 3 exercises. And then each time we made our way through, we rested a minute in between. So overall, probably a lot of blood flow right now. You're probably feeling pretty pumped. It's always a great feeling. So we focused on upper body strength endurance. Why did we focus on this? To improve our overall sustainability of continued contractions, whether it's in the field or whether it's at home, without getting fatigued. Now that we've concluded this session, let's just focus on going through the cool down. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on movements that are going to target the areas that we trained today. So let's just start off by extending forward. So what we're doing here is we're spreading apart the upper back. So interlocking the hands in front of the body. And we're looking for a stretch in between the shoulder blades. So just in front of the body as we reach out and extend. Let's switch this up now. Let's focus on bringing the chest out. Let's focus on trying to bring the elbows back behind the body. So we're trying to depress the shoulders, which means push them down in towards the floor as we try to get a stretch in through our chest. So just focus on holding this position. So let's relax. Let's focus on bringing an arm across the chest. So the supporting arm is just above the shoulder. And we're focusing on holding this position. So let's switch to the alternate side now. Let's focus on the triceps. We're going to bring one arm. Let's bring it behind. So the chin up is off the chin is up off of your chest. Your head is forward, straight through the back. Holding each stretch for a minimum of 20 seconds. And let's switch to the other side. So at home, you can feel free to repeat these stretches 2 to 3 more times. I'm going to wrap up the session there. So that was a stretch, static stretch through the upper body that targeted the primary muscles that we used today. As I mentioned, feel free to repeat those My name is Jordan Guillen, the PSP Fitness and Sports Coordinator out of London, Ontario, supporting Southwestern Ontario. Thank you for joining me through this session today. Don't forget to check out the other workouts that we have on our playlists. Not only that, our series and our workshops. Thank you very much everybody. Thank you. Have a great day.